Hey horror fans, welcome back to Room 237. Coming at you with another a random review. Now, if you follow my channel, you know that the 1930s is my favorite decade of horror. 30s and 40s is my favorite era. And this is a major film from the 30s that I definitely aware of, had seen clips of, but I've never seen the whole thing until now. I can't believe it took me this long to see it, but it's a film from 1932, and that is Tod Browning's Freaks. Absolute classic, very important film. Of course, Tod Browning, he directed Dracula the year before. He also directed, I think he did Blackbird with Lon Chaney. He also did the lost film London After Midnight, which he remade in '35 called A Mark of the Vampire. And then he did like two more films in '37 and '39, but with Freaks, this pretty much destroyed his career, because this was incredibly controversial when it first came out in 1932. Because at that time, people had never seen trying to figure out how I want to word it. People with disabilities had never been on film before. I mean, at that time, this is what they were. They were the sideshow circus freaks. And, you know, where they had created monsters with latex and makeup and costumes. With this, it's all natural. Like, every, quote, freak in this film is actually a working, or was a working circus freak. And it, no pun intended, freaked everyone out. They couldn't handle it. And there was some stuff that I had read that doesn't really make sense, but like how it freaked people out, which I'll get to. But in fact, two of the main freaks in this, the dwarf couple, they're actually siblings in real life. There was a group of them, and they actually played. They were actually part of the Munchkins. But I mean, you have like the bearded lady. You have the, I don't even know what they're called. There's a list here. Harry and Daisy Earls is the Hans and Frida characters, the dwarf couple. There was a guy, Johnny Eck, who had sacral agenesis. It's a spine. It's a spine abnormality. Conjoined twins at the hip. Schlitzie, a man with a microcephaly, which is a overgrown head. And then a couple girls that look like that. Was her name Pepper? Is that the girl's name on American Horror Story? The one with like the little thing of hair and the teeth. And then there's what they call like the stork lady, who I think had that progeria disease. There was, one guy with no legs. There was another guy with no limbs. He was just a head and a torso. He would kind of roll around. And it all takes place at the circus, and there's it's actually this Harry and did I say Harry and Daisy? Harry and Daisy Earls play Hans and Frida, who were this engaged dwarf couple. But there's this trapeze artist named Cleopatra that Hans sort of has a crush on in front of Frida. And eventually Cleopatra allows him to like flirt with her and stuff, much because she thinks it's funny and all the other people around her think it's funny. And she's dating one of the Hercules strongmen of the circus. And then when they learn that he just inherited a large fortune, they conspire for her to marry him, calling off his engagement with Frida, so they can then kill him and inherit the fortune. And then that's when the rest of the freaks find out about it. Now, this is a very short film. I mean, it clocks in now at, the one I have is of 65 minutes, which it was significantly cut because it was so controversial. Like, even like some of the stuff I read was it wasn't just a Gooble Gobble scene or the ending that freaked people out. It was, I read something that people were even disturbed by. There's a scene where it shows the freaks just hanging out, pretty much in their day-to-day life, how they overcome they're all just hanging out, talking. Like the guy with no arms or legs, it shows how he lights his own cigarettes with his mouth, how he gets the match ready. A woman with no arms, it shows how she drinks wine from a glass with her feet. And like apparently that fucked people up, seeing them overcome their disabilities and acting normal. I don't know what says people more than that. Oh, they act like us, which means we're not different. I don't like them anymore. That's scary. I'm like them. Yeah, people fucking suck. But also, but yeah, so it got cut significantly, and I think it was like a whole reel of film was lost. I could be wrong on that, but it was significantly longer, and this is the only cut that now exists. I would say I liked the film. I did enjoy it. It was very different. But this version, and I don't mean the cut of the film because this is the only one you can get, just this version. Like, I bought this used, and I don't know who made this. If anyone has heard of the company, Mr. Fat W Video, it literally looks like a school sport event or play that you buy. I mean, this is literally like printed off the computer. So, I mean, the audio is really shitty. And where it's an older film and the audio isn't restored and that great anyway. And some of the characters, like the two dwarf characters, they have their naturally higher voices. Or some of the other characters, like the guy that stutters, for example. I stutter, but it's harder to understand people with this version, just this very bottom of the barrel version. So it's not the film's fault, it's just how I happen to see it. I am just glad to have Freaks. This has been on my list for quite a while. And I mean, I'm sure there's like a Criterion version that I can get, like a much better version. This was just the only one that was available at the time. And again, I don't shop online, so. But there's also been big debate on whether this is actually a horror film. A lot of critics and scholars say it's not. It's more of a um, social commentary, or like a social drama, maybe even a thriller. Because, I mean, 1932, it's still deep in the clutches of the Great Depression. A lot of people think, and I can see how this is a big stance on social class, like how, you know, people can look down upon those without money. I see where people would get that from this. But, and really, just with the exception of the Gooble Gobble and the ending, it really isn't much of a horror film. It has scary moments. That's about it. Some of the most famous in film history. I mean, the Gooble Gobble scene is when Cleopatra and Hans get married, and they're in the tent with all the freaks, and they have this little ceremony where they accept her as one of their own. So they start hitting the table and they say, "We accept her, one of us, Gooble Gobble, Gooble Gobble." And they just keep chanting it until she gets freaked out and leaves. I mean, South Park referenced that in a Butter's very own episode from season 5 with the parent killers. The Ramseys, O.J. Simpson, and this other guy doing it to Butter's parents. It was referenced in A Wolf of Wall Street. It's been referenced a bunch of times, the whole Gooble Gobble scene. One of us, one of us. And then the ending when the freaks get their revenge on Cleopatra and the Hercules guy. Yeah, it's creepy. It's genuinely scary. I see why it could have messed people up. I mean, you have people. I mean, I guess you could call this the first exploitation film, like straightforward exploitation film. Because they didn't create monsters with makeup. They got real, like, legit circus performers, and they're making them act scary. And, you know, rainstorm, night, lightning, they're like crawling under the carriages with knives in their teeth or in their hand. Just angry looking, crawling after the guy. Scary scene. All that said, this film just kind of bummed me out more than anything. I felt bad watching it. Not because they have people with deformities playing scary, laughed at people, but the relationship between Hans and Frida kind of bummed me out. You know, the cute little high voices and, you know, pretty much leaves Frida for this normal sized woman who is using him to laugh at. She didn't even know about his fortune yet. And it's kind of sad. And then at the end, when she's hugging him and trying to make him feel better, it kind of bummed me out more. I'm not gonna lie. Kind of made me sad watching it. But I would say this is a ballsy ass film. Also, I would be a fool to forget that, yeah, this was the main inspiration for the freak show season of American Horror Story. But I mean, it was ballsy to. I mean, very original. And, you know, I think if anyone could have done it, could have been Todd Browning. maybe 1932 wasn't the right time because it was a huge, it was a failure. It failed at the box office. People just, they hated it and they thought it was disgusting, vile, and they thought it was a revolting film. Whether it be because, yeah, you had people with deformities in it, or because the satire behind it, like, oh yeah, that's how the rich treat the poor during the Depression. People weren't ready for something this heavy. And but then the 1960s, it was I think it was found and then re-released, and it became a hit. Then it became like a drive-in favorite in the 70s, and in the 90s it was you know, it was preserved into the film registry. So it's definitely, it was a long road, but it earned its place. I really liked it. I liked the idea of, you know, setting it in a circus. I've always liked the idea of a circus. I mean, why I love the Joker. It's why one of my favorite Disney movies is Something Wicked This Way Comes, which I loaned to someone I used to work with, so I ain't probably gonna get that back now. But you know, I like the idea of a creepy circus. I did have one movie that was newer. It was called Freak Show. I guess it's kind of a remake because it also had, you know, people with abnormalities. And it's been banned in like 32 countries, but I bought it for like $2 and it skipped like a bastard. I think I only saw like the first 10 minutes, so I don't know what was so shocking about it. But I enjoyed this film. It was worth the wait. Even with the poor quality of just this version, 65 minutes is very forgiving. It's very short. It's very to the point. And, you know, if you think you're going to get like a really fucked up, straightforward horror film, you're probably going to be disappointed because there is some drama type stuff in it. But, you know, it's worth it once you get, you know, Gooble Gobble and the end revenge sequence. But some parts are kind of sad also. But, yeah, I really enjoyed Freaks. And sadly, Todd Browning only got to do, like, I think 3 or 4 films after this. Like, his last film, this was 32, his last film was in 39. It pretty much fucked his career, but yeah. I'm glad to have finally seen Freaks. I enjoyed it. But anyway, thank you for watching.